Hello, everyone. Welcome to Contact Lost, the Polish podcast about Warhammer 40k. I am your host, Tweak or Tomek, and here with me is my partner in crime and co-host, Michał, otherwise known as Joker.
Hi everyone.
Hi, dude. And now, on to our guest. This guy has visited us in the past to talk about a tournament that he participated in. Today, he will focus on something completely different because today we are having a closer look at two armies that I potentially might pick up. We shall see. Let's see if they convince me. So, our guest is Asarnil. Hi, dude.
Hi, man.
And Asarnil is here to talk about Death Guard, so an army that we haven't spoken about for a while. So we are going to look at it from different aspects. Is it good for single player tournaments? Is it good for team tournaments, etc., etc.? And then we are going to interview Joker to see if Chaos Demons can pull anything interesting on the tables as well. So I hope you're in for an interesting ride. And yeah, I think we should get right into it. So, Asarnil, tell us something about yourself. Tell us why have you picked up Death Guard? Because I think the last time we spoke, you were very much into what was it, Chaos Space Marines, and
Yes.
now Death Guard. What has changed?
Well, since I started to play Warhammer 40,000 some time ago, I was always into Chaos in general. Either Chaos Demons or Chaos Space Marines, Death Guard, Thousand Suns, what have you. And I always have had a little bit of Death Guard Force, but I was not really focusing on them that much. And I prefer to go with Chaos Space Marines, sometimes Chaos Demons, sometimes both. But after my COVID break with from the hobby, when I went back to play again, I decided that I really need to focus on one codex and one only to really try to master it as much as I can. And since Death Guard was one of the newest codex of Chaos at that time, and I always had a soft spot for Mortarion especially, I decided that this time this will be my army. Death Guard will be my main force, and we'll try to play them as much as possible. Possibly minimizing me playing other factions, as much as I can. So that was my thought process.
Okay. So, did you have any models previously, or did you have to pick up from scratch? And then, is this army easy to pick up in general?
I had some models. I had Mortarion from, I think, from the time when he was released, so some time ago. I purchased it mainly because I really loved the model, and I was painting him really slowly, piece by piece. I had some Plagueboard scrollers in the past. I think a couple of Plague Marines, but not really, not much. Mainly Mortarion and 3 tanks. And to answer your question, is it easy to pick Death Guard up? I think so. I mean, there are a couple of rosters that are typical for Death Guard, and you can go more infantry-based army list. You can start with tanks, with demon engines. So there are a lot of options, and I'll probably talk about them in a while. But to pick Death Guard up is quite easy. It's the army is very simple in general in general basis. The main thing of Death Guard is just survive and and be tough to kill. But in my opinion, there's much more into it, and it's not just that. It is definitely that. It's definitely a tough army to wipe. But and there are some other things that you can do with it.
Okay, so the models I think are quite easily available, right? It's not really difficult to find them either on eBay or the Polish Allegro or something like that. So that should be easy. How about the rules? Because it's been a year since I've played against Death Guard for the last time. So would it be difficult for me to understand how they play now? So have there been many changes since 8th in that army?
Well, I mean, there are some changes for sure, and the rules are actually almost completely different. But the main topic of the army remains the same. So if you played against Death Guard in the past, you may know what to expect from their units. They work a little bit differently. The disease army-wide rule is a little bit different. But in general, if you see, a unit of 10 Terminators of Death Guard, you know what to expect, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so that didn't change that much. There are actually quite a lot of rules that can be used by Death Guard, and you can multiply diseases and you can spread diseases from one unit to another. There are a lot of elite characters that do specific things that you need to remember. But in general, playing against Death Guard is not really complicated. Mastering it and remembering all of the 1,000 rules that they have, every little buff and every little spell and stratagem, that is a challenge for sure.
Okay, so you've basically taken this army, at least from what I know, to a bunch of most recent tournaments in Poland. I think you've had the army at the Heresy in Tricity, and you've had the army at the Polish Team Championships. So 2 completely different settings, singles and team tournament. So let's focus on the first aspect. So how does this army play in singles tournament? What can you give us like examples of lists, or tell us what you've played? What is reliable in this army, and what do you meet in tournaments?
Right. So the most standard army list of Death Guard, which I don't play, by the way, contains for sure Terminators, either Death Shrouds or Blightlord Terminators, and most notably Contemptor Dreadnoughts, either 2 or 3, and and other things, but that's the main force. And the great thing about Death Guard Contemptor Dreadnoughts, because we all know the Dreadnoughts, but it's really well matched with buffs that they can get from the characters. For example, from Tallyman, they can have +1 to hit, one of them. They can have exploding 6s on hit, and rerolls and so on. So Contemptor Dreadnoughts, they definitely look, at least on paper, like a very good choice for Death Guard army. I don't play them since I have this weird rule of my own that I don't really like Forge World and mixing Forge World with Codex. So I really try to stick into the units that are in the Codex, and that's why I opt to not include Contemptor Dreadnoughts, but Plague Burst Crawlers. So the tanks that not only have to last cannons, well, they're not really last cannons, but sort of like last cannons.
So equivalent.
Right, and a mortar that can shoot without line of sight, which is quite great. What I also like to include in my army is obviously Mortarion, and the lists sometimes include Mortarion, but not that much. And I think that is a little bit something that is a little bit changing with Death Guard. Much more people playing Death Guard thinks about Mortarion like a liability, really. So a quarter of your army that can die in one turn. but it changes because it seems like Mortarion is really tough to kill, and he can single-handedly really win you a battle on his own. So, and I really like playing him. You know, he's a big model. He really produces this epic moments of, you know, staying alive on one wound for a couple of phases from the opponent's turn, and you know, he's really nice to play. And so that's, I think, this two lists, one with Contemptor Dreadnoughts, one with Mortarion, are pretty much standard. There is another list that is very interesting that had a third place on LGT recently. That is a Terminus Est list, which means it is from Caradron book, and it features only infantry and spawns. The list cannot contain any vehicles or Mortarion, so it's just a pure infantry force, which is great. But I think that specifically LGT rules allowed this this army list to really shine and go this far on this tournament.
Yeah, because they didn't use the WTC FAQ, which forbids you to create a string of boxwalkers throughout the whole table, which is really the biggest shtick that the list can provide.
Yep, exactly that.
But it sounds like a theme. I mean, you know, we'll see if we get there with when we talk about demons and Belakor, because he has also like his detachment or formation, or I'm not sure how to call it exactly, but basically
Army of Renown.
Yeah. So that also seems to, you know, circle around basically infantry and just running across the table with swarms of demons. So it sounds like a theme for chaos.
Yeah, there's definitely similarities between these two Army of Renowns, definitely.
So you said that you play Mortarion because you really like the model. Does taking Mortarion imply any specific play company or anything else that you need to choose?
Right. So my thought process on choosing Mortarion, specifically army list, is that I know that Mortarion will try to survive one or two turns if possible. So just, you know, flying across the battlefield and, you know, really being a bullet magnet for all of the opponent's army. That was his role. So I had to fill the other roles in the army list, and I think that Plagueburst Crawlers are definitely perfect for that, because what they do is they focus with their no line of sight mortars on small units that are on opponents' objectives. Usually, players tend to leave like a unit of 5 marines or a unit of cultists, or really a small unit only to guard their objective, and that is really an easy prey for 3 mortars of Plagueburst Crawlers. And besides that, of course, quite a lot of boxwalkers in my army list. I had 60 of them, so 3 units of 20, just to make sure that all of my objectives are covered, and possibly the middle ones are also covered with a lot of, you know, infantry that are fearless. They don't run away, and that's basically it. I had also 2 units of 3 Deathshot Terminators. They're just dips to just deep strike and, you know, be a nuisance. Really, not really something that the opponent will play against. But yeah, the main focus was Mortarion and him trying to survive as much as possible. And
So
sometimes just one note. Sometimes if I'm playing against a army that has trouble killing Mortarion in one turn, they tend to ignore Mortarion and not shoot or charge him at all, which I mean, I can understand the choice because he's really hard to kill. But if he is cut loose, I mean, he can really wreak havoc in army of the opponent. And he really has everything to deal with hard targets, with hordes, with with casters, with characters. It's really nice model to play.
So in the past, I remember that the strong part of fielding Mortarion was that, well, if you took him with someone else and someone could use whatever that was, warp time or another spell that allowed him to move faster, he was a real threat because he could get there really quickly, and as you said, wreak havoc. Is it still the case? Can you still somehow push him? Can you make him right? So he just slowly advances through the field.
Yeah, that's a big shame. I mean, from my perspective, obviously, that's actually true for all dev card units. They don't have any gimmicks that allow them to move faster, to charge after running, or to charge better after deep strike. They're just slowly getting there and charging on 9 inches from deep strike as you should. And Mortarion is no exception. He just flies 12 inches, then takes all the ammunition to the face and prays to Papa Norgul to survive, and then on second turn tries to kill as much as possible before exploding.
He's super fast by DevGuard standards.
That's true.
12 inches isn't that bad.
That's definitely true. And now with 9th edition and focusing on objectives, having this Mortarion big model on the very center of the battlefield, where he can reach almost every objective on the next turn. He really is a threat that is difficult to ignore, and if you do, that may well be your demise, really.
So since we've started talking about objectives and playing the mission, what missions do you choose with your list for singles? I mean, as you said, Mortarion, 60 Poxwalkers, like 6 Terminators in, I think, different configurations, like 2 units of 3, 3 Plagueburst Crawlers. How does that play the mission, and which missions, which objectives do you usually pick?
All right, so my usual 2 picks, and the third is obviously, as for most of the army lists, a difficult choice, but I have 2 standard ones. First one is a codex objective from DevCard, which is Spread the Sickness. You basically have to vomit on an objective, and once you do that, you have 3 points at the end of the battle. This is the only action that can be performed by Poxwalkers. They cannot do Octarius, they cannot raise the flags, they only can vomit on objectives, which is, from the lore perspective, quite quite a nice catch. And this is the first one. I prefer to do this than the Octarius one, which is usually a standard choice from the players, because it's as a dev card, it's definitely difficult to be on your opponent's edge quite fast. And since I'm not taking any infantry besides Poxwalkers who cannot perform this action, and Death Route Terminators, which should not really focus on performing actions, rather on killing. So that's the obvious choice from my side, and I usually tend to get from 9 to 12 points pretty easily from this objective. Now, second one is usually for me the new domination objective, which is called Strangleton, Thorn, Stranglehold, something like that.
Stranglehold. Yeah.
Right. And in this objective, you have to control 3 objectives at the end of your turn and more than your opponent. And so my reasoning for this objective is that since I have 3 Plague Burst crawlers, and usually the opponent will have hard time to have every single objective covered with a lot of stuff. Usually there is one objective which is not guarded that well, and that's the job for the mortars from Plague Burst crawlers. So the usual situation and the ideal situation for me is that I have 3 objectives in my deployment. I kill one thing on one of the opponent's objectives, and now I have 3 objectives. Opponent has 2 objectives, which gives me 3 points in each turn. Of course, that's just a theory, and a lot of things can go wrong, but it's also quite a stable objective, I would say, to get at least 12 points. And for the third objective, so for Death Guard, the usual objective that you can lean towards is the one. I don't remember the names. The one where you have to have 3 most expensive units surviving until the end of the game, and that's to the last. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the downside of Mortarion. He is definitely one of the most expensive units in the army, and he definitely doesn't live until the end of the battle. So that means that it's a max 10-point objective for me, which is not ideal. So I decided that it's not a good idea. I try to get an objective that is maybe related to the mission. Some of them are doable, but not a lot of them. So it's really a matter of my opponent. If there is nothing special that I can get from my opponent, I usually take what's it called? The one with the kill points that you have to kill more units during
grind them down.
Grind them down, right? Because having units of 20 poxwalkers, crawlers that are really hard to kill, and not much more, it makes me lose few units, and I can then focus on killing 1 or 2 and then getting the objective done.
Okay,
that's it.
Okay, that's really in depth. So how about the matchups? Like, is there any matchup that you in particular fear, or do you feel fairly comfortable playing against anyone?
You mean besides Admech and Drukhari, right?
Well, if you can tell us something about those matchups as well. I mean, I thought it's a resilient army, so
well,
yeah. How do you fare? In your experience, how do you fare against the top armies?
All right. So against Admech, I only played once against Kark, and that's one of our top players in Poland, and he had an army of Admech that was before the FAQ. No. He definitely had it once. It was already cool. But there was a FAQ some time ago from Games Workshop, and he was playing the version before that FAQ, so the most cancerous one. And I had a good mission. I had quite good rolls, and I managed to lose only 18-2, I think, or 70-3. So not
You're
a good
hero.
result, but against this army and against this player, I think that was quite a success. So against the today's Admech, I'm not really sure how I will fare. I think I can bring around 5 to 8 points maybe, but that really depends on who's starting and what's the terrain on the table, I think.
So yeah, about that, is this army terrain dependent very much?
Not that much. I mean, you have to have a terrain piece that you can hide Mortarion behind. If not, you risk really losing him on the first turn, which is not ideal for sure. Besides that, not really. I mean, it's always great to have some big ruins in the middle, so you can hide Poxwalkers so they don't die from combi bolters and such. But not really that dependent from the terrains. You don't want to have too many terrains for the plague burst crawlers, last cannons to shoot. I mean, not last cannons, you know what I mean. But besides that, not really. And what is also great about this army is that you don't necessarily want to be first, really. I mean, you can survive without going first, and we still live in the era where going first is definitely very strong factor in who's winning and who's losing, and this army is not that dependent on that starting the battle. A little bit, but not that much.
Okay. And
right,
how? Yeah, go on.
So that was Admech against Drukhari. It's doable. You can really fight against them a little bit. On our DMP, our Polish team tournament, championship, I mean, I played against 2 Drukhari armies, and one time I lost, I think, 2-5, so 15-5, and the second one, which I played against Crazy Man, so again, quite a good opponent, but I had really sick rolls, and I managed to win 19-1, which is against Drukhari, I mean, a miracle, kind of. But yeah, but I really put everything on one hand, which is I assumed that I have to start the game, and I have put Mortarion on a very center of battlefield, and just assume that if I win the roll-off, then he will fly and kill something and try to survive again, and that actually happened, and he survived a lot, but that's not really a skillful play. It's just relying on luck. But I think against Drukhari, if you want to win, you have to rely on luck, really.
At the end of the day, it's a game of dice, so.
True. I mean, some people may disagree with you on that one, but yeah, sometimes a single roll-off can sway the tides, really.
Yeah, true. Okay, how do you fare in a mirror matchup? Have you ever had a chance to play against another Death Guard?
I have not, no. But I think in the mirror matchup, Mortarion will be definitely an advantage for me, because Death Guard, the usual standard list of Death Guard with Contemptor Dreadnoughts and with some Terminators, they don't really have that much firepower to kill Mortarion in one turn. And they have some gimmicks like fight last, etc. Some mortal wounds here and there, but it will be very difficult to kill Mortarion in one turn. And if he charges even 10 Terminators, there can be really a lot of damage there. So I'm pretty confident I would have an advantage in the mirror matchup.
Okay. Any other games? Any other matchups that you've played that you either fear or feel confident about?
Well, that's a good thing about Death Guard, I think. Maybe the Mortarion list is not really something that you can get this expression true about them, but usually what people are saying, and I think that's true, is that with Death Guard it's really hard to lose, but it's really hard to win as well, especially on high results like 20-0. It's really difficult to either lose or win 20-0 with Death Guard, which means that there are, besides Admech and Drukhari, of course, there are no matchups that you lose automatically, and there is a hard counter to your army. You can always survive a little bit and get some objectives and some points to win a draw, basically. So yeah, I think that's an upside of Death Guard. There is no hard counter to it.
Okay, I think you've never answered my question about the plague companies that you use. So
okay,
which one comes with? I mean, do you use the one that comes with Mortarion, or is there anything specific, like, or anything that you use that might surprise your opponents, for example?
Well, actually, Mortarion doesn't have his own plague company. I mean, he doesn't have one. There are some of plague companies that are named after him, but he's not belonging to any specific one, which is an interesting fact.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are definitely good choices there in the plague companies. There's the Mortarion's Anvil, which is the usual one that people take. They have a interesting stratagem that allows you to perform heroic intervention with your units for one command point, which is great. And they also have quite an interesting relic that you can add to your Demon Prince to have. You can add to any character, but Demon Prince really goes well with it, which allows you to reroll all hits and wound rolls, which is quite a powerful thing on the Demon Prince that has a lot of attacks and quite strong ones. What I usually take, and that's because I have the crawlers, I usually take the Poxmonger plague company, which allows me to shoot into combat with my blast weapons from the tank, so with mortars.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives me +1 to hit if I shoot into my combat. So actually being charged and being in combat is better for my tanks than not. They hit better if they're in combat.
Does this plague company have any useful relics or warlord trait? Anything of value?
No, not really. I mean, the warlord trait is what I'm not sure if you know that, but the warlord traits that are related to plague companies, they are all additional diseases that you can give your warlord, and some of them are definitely interesting, but the Poxmonger one is definitely not interesting. I'm just looking at it, and I can't really even remember,
I think that's the one that gives -1 to leadership and -1 to attrition test or something like that.
Yes. I mean, there definitely are situations that it can be useful for sure, but not a lot of them. The relic is interesting. It can give one of your demon engines 4+ of invulnerable save. But the problem is that if you have 3 demon engines and you give one of them better save, people will just shoot the other 2. So that I tend to in the past I took it, and after a couple of battles it turns out that it's just a relic that is not worth 1 command point to buy.
All right.
And what about the additional or the plague company that you can take on Mortarion? What do you take in your list?
Right. Well, actually, how it works is that you have to choose 3 diseases, so free warlord traits from the plague companies, and Mortarion will have it. And what's great about it is that you can choose it from the very beginning of your battle and not on your roster, which means that you can switch it depending on who you play against. So that's a good side of it. The bad side of it is that if you choose 3 of them, there aren't very much a lot of choices, because there are 3 or maybe 4 that are really good. Because what's interesting is that a lot of these contagions are giving buffs to units from the specific plague company. And since Mortarion doesn't have his own plague company and you have the others from poxmongers, you really don't benefit from, let's say, contagion from Mortarion Chosen Sons, for example, which gives you that if you shoot from the unit from Mortarion Chosen Sons, the opponent doesn't have benefit of cover. But since you don't have any units that have this, it doesn't really work.
Doesn't it say that it replaces the irrelevant plague company keyword with just Death Guard or something like that?
No,
that would make sense.
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately,
Okay.
I don't think it works like this. I mean, I can check, but no, because it just
that sucks then.
That sucks, but the usual 3 that people choose are quite good, so that's not really
okay.
that bad.
Okay. I guess we can talk about teams.
Okay.
Joker, do you want to shoot your question?
Yeah, so how do you see Death Guard placing in a team tournament? I mean, in terms of a team composition, is it one of the stronger codices in your opinion? Does it have a place in, let's say, 5-man tournament?
Well, playing Death Guard, obviously, I think they're worth picking for the team tournament. And you can definitely build an army list that will have one specific job in the team tournament to take the hardest opponent and try to get a couple of points out of them, meaning that you'll probably play against Admech and Drukhari a lot. But if I think in the team composition, you really would like to have a one of the armies that can take a hard hit and not be completely massacred in second turn. And I think Death Guard can definitely fill that role. Maybe not the Mortarion list, because it's really you can lose quite heavily with it, but a list with a lot of Terminators and a lot of Poxwalkers, maybe a Terminus Est even list can definitely take a hit.
So I've heard, just to agree on terminology a little bit. I've listened to some foreign podcasts, and in them, 2 expressions were used, or 2 words were used. Something called the sword lists and something called the shield lists. The sword lists would be the ones that go in for high points and like big wins to secure them and to grant the team as many points as possible. And the shield list would be the one that usually is set out as the first one by the team. So like something that is able to take on all comers basically. So you said that with this army, you don't really score the biggest wins, and it's a reliable army. Does that automatically mean that it's a shield list and you would feel comfortable as a shield list? Or
I think so.
Okay, all right. So
yeah.
So you take the biggest blow, so to say, to the chest for the team.
Yes, assuming that the list is built to fulfill this role. when we played in Kozłów in the team tournament, my list was not that. Definitely, I was tasked to bring the points from the matchups. But that was kind of because of our team composition, not because DevGuard is really good at hard hitting.
Okay, so in that case then, and here is another term, so to say, in order to focus on just, for example, one aspect of a list or one strength of the army, you build something that foreigners call a skew list. So would you say that for a team tournament you would build a skew list, and if yes, what would that contain?
Right. Well, I have actually an idea of a really fun list that possibly can work. I'm not sure yet. I definitely have to test it, but a very aggressive and mobile DevGuard list. I know it's a different. It's a weird thing to say.
It's
mobile
almost an
oxymoron.
yeah. But I think actually it's quite possible. It's really one trick pony list where you will have obviously Mortarion and 3 lawn mowers, what they called.
Plague drones.
Plague drones, yes. 3 plague drones, and then some demon prints, for example. Everything that flies and have a lot of, at least 10 movements, and is really good at fighting people. This is I think one trick pony list, because you're basically saying here is Mortarion and here is a lot of other stuff that flies towards you. What do you kill? And they are really hard to kill. And especially if you start the game and win the roll-off, it will be for some lists really hard to push back against this kind of list. Especially, I think more army lists that are focused on shooting rather than fighting. I think it will be a little bit difficult for them, because even if you kill Mortarion and maybe one more thing, two drones with a demon prince and a couple of terminators that will deep strike on turn 2. I think that's something really difficult to push against if you're focusing on shooting only.
So if you're talking about a fast-moving DevGuard army, would you ever consider bringing Mythic Blight Haulers?
No, I don't think so. They do have 10 movement speed, but they're not flying, so it's difficult for them to move around the ruins and all the terrains. And they're not really fighting either, they're just shooting. I know that there are some lists including them, and they're definitely worth a try and a thought if that's something maybe fitting for your army list. But I didn't really think about them that much. I can be wrong, but in my opinion, they're not that great. They're just too expensive for what they do.
Okay, I was going through some lists before we did this podcast, and I saw, I think there is this well-known guy in the States, Don Hooson, and he plays Death Guard and everything that is chaos really, and he had a demon engine list focusing on drones, on blight haulers, and the blight haulers apparently can get very, very resilient with belching fumes or something like that. So the stratagem that allows them to survive more. But the negative aspect of that list, it is very fighty. It hits like a freight train, but it doesn't really have objectives secured. So there is a downside to everything, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, because really for securing the objectives, I think the best unit is definitely Poxwalkers. And in order to take them, you'll have to have either Plague Marines or Terminators, because that how they work, which is I really hate this rule, especially in the Terminus Est list, because you think that a Typhus army that has a horde of poxwalkers, they would remove this kind of restriction, but they didn't. And having poxwalkers really forces you to take Terminators, and if you take Terminators, a couple of additional characters that will buff them will be nice. And the build the list kind of built itself up, and not a lot of points left for the other demon engines. So you'll have to just put everything on one card and really try to massacre your opponent in 2-3 turns and then worry about the objectives.
All right. And yeah, how do you feel about the future of this army? I mean, I think there is gossip that one of the next books or box sets are going to be Tyranids versus Custodes. Definitely, Guard needs to get their codex sooner or later, because the army, I think, I've seen some like a meta watch from the last weekend or something like that, and both Tau and Guard had like a win rate of below 30%. So that's really, really poor, and they need any support they can get. So a new codex would be welcome. But let's say that they do get a codex. Probably it's going to be a horde army. Orcs are not really a horde army anymore. They're mostly mechanized armies, but still, someone might want to field loads and loads of boys. Tyranids probably will always remain a horde army. So how do you feel about the future and a meta shift to something like horde armies? Do you think Death Guard will be able to put up a fight and stand its ground against hordes, or will you have to think of something completely different?
I think Death Guard will fare very, very well against horde armies. I think it will actually be better meta for Death Guard than it is right now, because they have a lot of things that can switch their attacks to smashes, like Mortarion can do that. The drones have a lot of attacks. You can have a lot of flamers in your army. Death Shroud Terminators also can slash with their fights. So definitely, if we go towards the horde armies, I think that will be a great news for Death Guard.
Okay, so fingers crossed that it happens, and fingers crossed that we get all the remaining codices as soon as possible, because if it lasts too long, then the ninth edition will be a little bit of a drag. So listen, guys, I think it would be nice now, Asarnil, if you could pass the mic to Joker and maybe help me interview him about the second army of the evening. So I wanted to talk about Chaos Daemons for two reasons. One, I was really contemplating picking that army up. And the second reason,
If you say that in the past tense, that's a spoiler.
No. I mean, I do consider it. However, the army also has downsides, and these downsides have always been the deciding factor for me. Like, this army really struggled with shooting. So that's why I'm having this episode now, because I want you to help me understand if something or anything has changed about this army. So yeah, I mean, Joker, you've been playing demons for a longer while. You know the army through and through. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to look at Belakor already, but yeah, maybe tell us first, what have you tried out? What have you tested? What works in this army? What would you field in, for example, our game on Sunday?
Well, you asked me not to take demons last time round, so I mean,
but hypothetically,
for the game coming up. But before we go into that, I just want to say something about what you've just said, and no, the shooting hasn't changed. It's non-existent, and playing shooting is for, you know, for weak people. Put
Yeah,
it
but I
lightly.
also what I also meant is that this army hasn't really had an answer to shooting. So like it's, you know, you have a lot of infantry, for example, that is fairly soft, and shooting armies with a lot of like shitty shooting, I would say, like bolters and bolter spam could usually fare fairly well against this army. And the question is, has that changed in any way?
Well, I mean, the tables we play at nowadays are definitely more densely covered with terrain, so
Mhm.
that's definitely an upside to that. But well, no, obviously, lots of small arms fire is definitely still the problem. Although, if you look at the demon builds that are currently most common, they usually run a number of the big monsters. So actually, I'd say you're probably more worried about anti-tank shooting. And then Belakor, because you've asked about Belakor. Well, I don't think that in recent times I've seen a list that wouldn't include him.
Right, so he's
He's
fairly
just
popular.
that much of a beast. He's an auto take pretty much. And because of him, there are only pretty much two types of lists that are running about. So one is a Monster Mash style list running Belakor and a couple more greater demons, particularly Slaneshi ones, because they're probably the best of the bunch. And they help Belakor out by allowing him to advance and charge in the same turn. Or the other build that is, I think, a bit less common, but maybe even more interesting, is Belakor's Army of Renown, the Disciples of Belakor.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you go down that route, that does make your little guys a bit more resilient because of he changes the loci rule of demons to characters giving an aura of a -1 to hit and cannot reroll hit rolls when shooting. So that does help them a little in
Yeah,
terms of survivability.
sounds strong. Sounds like something that this army was missing for a longer while. So let's focus on the first type of list, maybe. So you've played a lot of greater demons. I remember facing you as you know, as because you brought the Slaneshi demons to the table. And you mentioned Slaneshi a second ago. Does that mean that the other greater demons don't see play that much, like Great Unclean One, Bloodthirsters, or is there room for them as well, or maybe in just very skewed lists?
Well, let's just say they're a lot less popular. You can usually find a lot of change in those sort of lists again because you can make it a very resilient model. Giving him a 3-up invuln and a 6+ Pheno Pain and a -1 damage from the Warlord trait. Although I was never really convinced by that guy. He just doesn't do much other than standing there and taking some shooting in the face. And yeah, I mean, Bloodthirsters and Great Unclean Ones, well, like I said, definitely less popular, and because you really need to keep a clean Slaneshi detachment, for example, to have that advance and charge. It really does make little room to take the other two guys, but I still think they're all right picks, but definitely not the most popular ones.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have
Asar,
I have a
yeah,
I have a
exactly.
different opinion
Go on.
about Lord of Change. I really like Lord of Change, and when we talk with Pania about his list, yeah, I always try to convince him that Lord of Change is a really good choice for only one reason, which is
Spamming Warp Ritual.
yes, Warp Ritual, exactly. If you can take a model that can every battle give you 12 points for the secondary objective, I will pick him anytime, really.
Yeah, but since they've changed that objective to not having to do it with the same model for 3 rounds, I think that's even less reason to take him, because psychic action doesn't forbid you from doing anything else, so you can just run up the board, do the ritual, and run further, and then you can do it with someone else the next turn.
Well, that's true, but you will not have +2 to cast. And that's definitely a upside from Lord of Change.
Okay, good one. But
I mean, I know.
Oh, okay.
I definitely understand your point, and that's exactly what Banya is saying. But I just think that it's worth it, and you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I like having
No, I mean, come
12
on.
points.
Fair enough. We're entitled to have different opinions. We don't have to agree on everything.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask about Banya and Banya's list, because he took demons to the 3-city heresy, and I think he finished what, 4th there?
Yeah.
Or something like that, quite high. And then he also probably played that at the team tournament, because I think I remember seeing pictures from
Yeah.
or photos from that tournament. So there were demons, definitely. So Banya makes it look like the army has a place both in singles and in team tournaments. So does he limit himself to Slaneshi demons as well? And then what does he do exactly to, make them tick?
Well, he had a little bit different lists in Heresy and in Kozłów, but the main idea was actually the same. During the team tournament, he took Belakor and I think 2 Slanesh demons, the Keeper of Secrets. But besides that, he also took 6 War Dogs from Renegade Knights, which basically do the same thing, just rush you over with a lot of big models that can hit like trucks. But it allowed him to have a couple of meltas that you can use to open some vehicles and kill some more difficult targets to kill. And
Cough Admech Flyers.
yeah,
Cough.
yeah,
Cough Raiders,
exactly.
cough. And getting to the meat of things.
The interesting thing about his list and what we learned about our opponents after we play against them is that his list was really something that a lot of teams that we played against were afraid of, and they always pick somebody that that will just tank the list and probably lose, which is definitely something interesting to think about. If you see a demon list, it's not something that you can consider on singles, right? But having this, I think it definitely is a definition of a skewed list, because this list does one thing only, but does it really well. Just rush you over and and fight you until you're dead. What also helped him a lot is that he won the role of 5 times out of 5 from this tournament.
Oh my god, that's lucky.
And this list really needs it, and he just did. So that's it.
So that's the secret.
Yeah,
That's
no
how he
skill, just
makes it
roll.
work.
You just have to have a skill to win the role of.
Right. So that's about Banya and his list. Let's get back to the topic of Belakor for a second. I mean, he is a completely revised datasheet, right? He is like a new model. Literally, it's a new model as well. I think from what I've seen, he is smaller than Magnus or Mortarion. You can actually hide him behind ruins, I think, right? That's like one of the main differences between him and the other greater demons. He's just
I'm not
smaller.
sure on model size, but he's smaller in the let's say in Oh, he's got 2 wounds less, so below 18, and that means he does benefit from obscuring, which Magnus and Mortarion both don't. So they
Right.
need really big blocks of terrain that can actually high enough to hide the ridiculously big wings. And Belakor doesn't really need that because he benefits from obscuring terrain. So yeah, that's definitely an upside.
So okay, so that's like one benefit of him. Another one, what you already said, right? So rerolls, and I think you also mentioned the -1 to hit if you take his detachment, right? Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, but he himself also has an innate -1 to hit, disabling your opponent to reroll the hit roll, and against shooting, he also has a -1 to the wound rolls. So
he's
he
quite
is very
annoying.
tanky.
Yeah. Okay. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, he has all the like god keywords.
Yeah, all 4 of them.
Right.
So yeah, as I've mentioned before, thanks to that, he benefits from the Slaneshi advance and charge. He can also use the Corn stratagem to fight again, for example. And yeah, there are quite a number of things that you can use to make him even better. So yeah, he's definitely that revision. His reincarnation is just, he's miles better. He doesn't even compare to the old model. It's just way different league.
And he's still for a demon of that size and with those, let's say, abilities, he's fairly cheap, right? I think he's like 360 points or something like that.
360 exactly.
Yeah, so you can take him in a patrol detachment with 3 Nurglings, and you can pretty much attach him to anything.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
That's
much.
mental. That's actually crazy. That would be my first idea, my first go-to, just have 3 bases of Nurglings and that big guy, and have him run across the field. But yeah, I think he can use stratagems from the demon codex, as you said. So stratagems for Slaneshi demons, Khorne demons, Nurgle demons, and so on, and Tzeentch. But he can also use the stratagems from the CSM book.
No, he can't.
I think he can in the, or well,
if you take his army of Reno, then you do benefit. Well, you can use the stratagems, but not on him because the faction keywords don't match. Oh, not really faction keywords, but keywords in general. Because obviously the CSM stratagems always target some sort of heretic star east unit or what have you, and he doesn't have any of those relevant keywords.
Okay, so I heard that that detachment of his, disciples of Belakor, is quite complicated to build. Actually, like there are a lot of restrictions, right? Things that you cannot take.
Yeah,
Like,
there are quite a number of them, but it's not that complicated. It's a bit tricky to get the most out of it, but it's not that complicated. I mean, all it is, it just forbids you from taking a whole bunch of stuff. So greater demons, the cult legions of Chaos Space Marines, if you will.
So like the thematic sort of space
Yeah,
marines,
well,
right?
the ones dedicated to a certain chaos god. So
Berserkers, plague marines, etc.
yeah, or just world eaters, thousand suns, etc. in
All right.
general.
Okay.
And it also forbids you from taking knights, titans if you're playing like 10,000 point games and you're a rich guy, and demon engines. Disappointingly, I think, because they might have some use, but you can't take them.
But I think there is one exception. One of my favorite models in the game actually can be taken in that, and that is a Soul Grinder. Because if you think about it, the Soul Grinder, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if he's a demon and something, but he's not a demon engine.
Yep, he's a demon. And well, monster, but that doesn't really matter. I think.
Yeah.
Monster. Maybe
So I think you can take those.
Nevertheless, yeah, you can take those.
And then you can give them -1 to hit.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, they're still bad.
Oh, come on. No, they're like such cool models. They must have something. Make them
They are
work.
cool. They are cool. Hopefully, when demons get codex, they'll see some game. But for now, they're just a nice addition to your collection on the shelf.
Ah, crap. I was hoping for something amazing here. But when I said that the detachment is quite restrictive, I also meant I think there is a rule that says that you have to
Yep.
take like I haven't finished yet. But
I
you
know
have
where you're going, and I'm looking at it, and I wanted to say it.
so go on. Maybe we're thinking about the same thing.
Well, to take a second demon of the chosen chaos god, you actually need to have one unit of each of the dedicated chaos god units.
Right. So it goes like in fours, I think. So you have to have one of Korn, one of Zinj, one of Slat, and then
And one of Nurgle, yeah, and then you can, yeah, and then to take a third, you need to have two of each, etc., etc.
all right. That sounds restrictive, but on the other hand, not so bad after all. I mean, it makes it look like you, as I said at the beginning, when Asarnil was talking about one of the exceptional detachments from Death Guard, that you are sort of forced into picking infantry, right? You like if you analyze what you cannot take, what you are left with is
Well,
a foot slugging army, basically.
yes and no. Because the reason why you're kind of restricted to infantry is because infantry models are the only ones that actually make sense taking in the demon army. And well, majority of demons are infantry or just small critters running or flying around. As people now do sometimes take a blob of screamers if you take the disciples of Belakor, and well, they're not infantry per se.
Okay, yeah, valid point.
So yeah, but that's the Belakor's specific restriction isn't really the reason for that. And if you take into account what people usually take for demons, there are ways to work around that restriction so it doesn't impact you that much. You can't just take anything you'd like, unfortunately, but it's not that bad
Okay.
as it might sound at first.
No, but taking everything that you've said into account, it really makes it feel like the bloodletters are actually stronger than they were in that detachment.
They mainly benefit from one of the psychic powers from Belakor's dedicated Noctic discipline, and if you take his army of renown, then any psyker in your army can take psychic powers from that discipline rather than the one that they've got in their respective codex.
But
And
is it instead or is it as well as?
No, I mean, you can either take powers from the Noctic discipline or from the discipline that you've got described in the codex. You can't mix, so like take one spell from each of them.
Okay.
It's either all in. It's all in on one of them.
But still, you can have like I don't know, Belakor sporting his own discipline, and then have another character in the list, let's say from the CSM army, and sports anything from the CSM book.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's still cool.
Yeah, you can.
So you said that the bloodletters benefit from one specific power. Which one is it?
It's the one. What I want to say, get the name right. Having a quick read. Yep, it's the first one, Shrouded Step. So it basically allows you to redeploy an infantry unit and just pick it up and drop it 9 inches away from enemy models. And then your bloodletters, you obviously upgrade them by spending a command point to have that once per game charge on 3d6 +1 if you've got a musician. So they're almost certain to get that charge in, and now they can do it even on the first turn. So definitely an upgrade. and you don't have to spend additional command points putting them in reserves, provided obviously you've got enough terrain on the board to hide them, because even though they get that -1 to hit now and not rerolling hit rolls against them, they still die pretty fast.
Where is that doom and gloom coming from? I mean, this sounds fantastic. This sounds like more survivable bloodletters that you can, give them -1 to hit. I don't know if you can give them -1 to wound, but like if they
No.
stay away, 12 inches or something like that. I think that the -1 works like that.
Yeah,
Am I
yes,
mistaken? Yeah.
yes. Provided the attacker is more than 12 inches away from them.
Right. And then I think there is a stratagem that allows you to go through units.
Yeah, exactly.
ghost,
So you
basically.
can. Oh yeah, good mention there. So yeah, you can bypass screens provided the meat of the opponent's army is within 12 inches after you teleport your bloodletters. Then yeah, you can, for 1 CP, I think it is. Yep, yeah, it's Legions of Shade. Yeah, for 1 CP, you can ignore enemy models in the movement or charge phases. So yeah, that's definitely something very good to have.
So that's actually mental, because you get what? You get the jump, or Gate of Infinity in the form of that spell that you've mentioned. And then you get something that allows you to move through models. So you can, as you said, you can charge through screens. And then, oh, by the way, can you take like bikers or cavalry? I don't know why I have fixation around cavalry. So like, can you take blood crushers in that detachment?
You can, but you can't teleport them with the spell, as it specifically says infantry.
Well, yeah, but if you take something really quick, something that goes through the battlefield quickly, and then you put that stratagem on them, and you get through the screen, like a ghost, you can basically get to the meat of your opponent's army, and get the model where like blood crushers were trapped because they usually died on the way, and with that,
Yeah, but they still will, because you have no means of getting advance and charge, and your cavalry has to run between terrain, so you're probably gonna have a hard time, getting out of hiding and then getting in the opponent's face in the same turn.
you're killing my dream.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, yeah, what you've mentioned is, it can work, but will it really?
So, yeah, but maybe you could make use of bikers. I don't know.
Well,
Zoom
you
around.
can't. Oh no, you can use it on. Or can you? Wait, because you have to be. No, the supports of Belakor. Yeah, that's for everyone. Yeah, bikers can do that, but
And can
bikers don't really fight well.
I mean, yeah, okay, but if you take a bigger amount of them, can bikers be Slaneshi somehow?
No.
I mean, not like
You're
Slaneshi.
trying to mix two different armies, and it doesn't work that way.
No, but they can be like, I don't know. What is the requirement for the shoot twice stratagem?
Well, yeah, you give them the Slanesh keyword, okay, but okay, you need to, before we discuss these things, you need to lay out the whole master plan that spawns up in your mind, because I'm jumping to conclusions otherwise.
So no, I was just thinking of bikers that ride around, shoot everything twice, and then are able to charge through screens and just again lock in combat something that is of value or is dangerous or might shoot you with line out of line of sight or something like this. Now kill that dream, please.
Asarnil, you want to do it?
Well, the problem is that these bikers don't shoot particularly well. They don't fight that well either. They die pretty easily. So that's it.
It was fun while it lasted.
Well, I know. I mean, it's a good idea and all, and I think there is some room for bikers, but not that. I think for Belakor army, the teleporting Bloodletter unit on turn 1, this is the main thing, and I think this is what makes this army list very interesting, and I think worth a try.
Okay, but that's just one psychic power. Are there any other that are worth mentioning? Anything else that he can take and benefit from, or the army can benefit from?
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. Yeah, so there's a power that makes one of your units untargetable, unless obviously they're the closest eligible target. And then you can put fight last on an enemy unit, but it's a warp charge value of 7, and then you need to roll higher than the enemy's leadership on 3d6, so it's not impossible, but still, well, it's very random to say the least. And what else was there? There was something, yeah, and you can and there's a malediction that makes one of your opponent's units subtract 1 from wound rolls in combat. So there are 4 pretty good ones, and then the other 2 are okay. One's very meh, and the other one is interesting, so to say.
Why?
Well, it deals mortal wounds in a funny way. So that's why basically it says that you select up to 6 models in an enemy's unit and add together the unmodified attack characteristic of all those models. And then you roll a number of dice equal to that amount. And for each roll of a 6+, that enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. So yeah, and it's interesting, but
Yeah,
I think there's
useful.
probably only one good target in the game for that, and that's witches, maybe. Because only then you get a big number of those dice, and then actually each mortal wound does paint them a bit.
Right. So, I mean,
So very situational.
But it does sound like this discipline overall is quite strong, and the strength is maybe not in what the power description does itself, but like if you think about even the jump thing. Now that I think of it, how much do you spend for putting a unit of bloodletters in deep strike? Is it 2?
It depends on the unit size. If it's more than 20 models, it's 2. If it's 20 or less, then it's 1.
Okay, so let's say that we have a big model, and you spend 2 CP to put them in deep strike. With one of the powers, you can start them on the table, hidden in a ruin or something, and then teleport them, and you save 2 CP that otherwise would be spent on putting them in deep strike. That in itself is powerful in that it doesn't directly come from the rule itself or from the power itself, but it saves you 2 CP, which I guess is of value. Yeah, but stratagems. We spoke only about one.
Yeah, but there aren't that many. There are only 6 in total dedicated for Belakor. 2 of which are strictly for for the Chaos Space Marine units, so they won't see that much play because usually the disciples of Belakor builds still feature only demons, rarely seeing any Chaos Space Marine support. So let's skip that as that's not the topic of the day. So we've mentioned Legions of Shade. There's one stratagem that requires Belakor to be on the battlefield, and then for 2 CP, if a saving throw is failed for any model, then the damage characteristic of that attack is changed to 0.
Okay.
Not bad, but for 2 CP, it's fairly pricey. And there is what's this one do?
I'm just having so many ideas with those things. No, seriously, like if you take what you've just said, 2 CP, on one hand, that sounds pricey. But on the other hand, if you can build the army the way we described it, you can run it as a single battalion, really, and it should suffice. So the battalion will bring you, what, 12 CP now in this edition, I think. So over the course of the game total, you have like 17 CP. You spend 1 or 2 on deep striking bloodletters, depending if you want to do that. So you have 15 or 16 CP. Those 2 aren't really that much.
Well, you also have to spend 1 additional CP on each bloodletter unit to give them the banner of blood.
Banner. Yeah, okay. But how many do you take usually, like in a 2K point game?
What, units of bloodletters?
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the Disciples of Belakor, I think you can take 3. 2 or 3 is probably the go-to amount. Because sticking 4 in will be complicated because of that. The Chaos God keyword restrictions. But 2 or 3 are manageable and make some sense. Right, so I've read a fairly long stratagem. So basically, for 1 CP, you can get an aura that lets you either heal or revive demons, provided that enemy units flee. So that's well, realistically, probably never going to happen. And then
wait. Again, don't kill my hopes. Doesn't Belakor do the same thing as what was that in Asarnil's list? I think we spoke about one of the plague companies that, or a relic that.
Yes, he does subtract 1 from the leadership and 1 from combat attrition test of enemy units within 6 inches of him.
Right. So there is potential.
Yeah, to heal 1 wound or return 1 model with 1 wound remaining for 1 CP.
No, but it's like 1 wound for 1 model, right? If it dies or if it comes back.
Yeah, okay. Each time a model flees, you can do that for 1 unit from your army.
But is it only for friendly units, or is it also for?
No, you pick a unit that gains this aura that says whilst enemy units within 6 inches of that unit start fleeing, then the unit that you've chosen as the trigger of the stratagem receives said benefits.
Okay.
It sounds great, but I agree with Joker. It's not. I mean, in certain
work.
Yeah, in certain situations, it can be cool. it can look cool, definitely. But first of all, there's if you charge something with blood letters, and I think we're thinking about blood letters mainly here. You either kill it all the way, or it's something tough that it doesn't really matter if you revive 1 or 2 blood letters, and if anything happens for opponents in a bad way, they can always spend 2 CPs to not flee at all, and they will not revive anyway in that scenario. So I mean, and I agree that this army list has potential, but mainly the things that you mentioning, Joker, is they all sound cool, and they're very situational, I think.
But you can put that last thing that we were discussing on Belakor himself, right?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
So if he goes into like a blob or something and kills 10 models, does it mean that he regains 10 wounds?
No, because it's when those models flee, not when he kills them.
Oh, right.
That's
Okay.
first thing. The second
So-
thing is you have to use this stratagem at the start of the morale phase. So once you use it, your opponent knows you've used it, and then he just pays 2 CP for his blob to stay there. And you've just blown a CP for nothing.
Yeah,
Literally nothing.
That's a shame. And how about, I mean, okay, we were thinking about bloodletters. How about, I don't know, pink horrors that split? When they split and you revive them, do the blue horrors stay and pink horrors appear? Or how does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is how it would work.
So there is potential again. I'm just trying to give this army a chance. Come on, guys, help me.
I mean, we're not writing it off. We're just writing off your ideas.
Fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can always count on you guys. Cheers for that.
I mean, having pink horrors within 6 inches of an enemy unit that is possibly failing a morale test,
That will never happen.
mate.
I remember you charging me with pink horrors.
Yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing. But that unit that got charged flee or die, no.
It doesn't have to be a single unit of pink horrors charging. It could be Belakor there as well to do that -1 leadership, -1 attrition, and pink horrors.
A lot of
Still.
ifs.
Yeah, exactly. And you
Yeah,
have
there are
to
conditions,
take into
yeah.
consideration that we don't really have a meta of blobs except for Skitari. So still, your opponent just auto passes the morale phase, the morale check, and if not, other than that, you mostly have MSU units running about. So a 5-man unit is almost never failing leadership. It's either dying first or not losing enough models to fail a morale check.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Okay, and then maybe a comment on what I said at the beginning about Belakor, that you can take him in a patrol with Nurglings. Does it make sense to do so with like any other army? Because if you include something that isn't from a codex, probably the units from that codex lose their rules. So can you think of a scenario where taking Belakor in a small patrol actually makes sense?
I would take him in a patrol like you've mentioned, probably, because he just enjoys sitting in with some Slaneshi units to get that advance in charge, because that makes him so much better and allows you to stick him in the opponent's face turn 1. But I wouldn't pair him with Thousand Suns because they lose too much. But they're a new book. If you're playing CSM, yeah, go for it. You can add them in. And but Ban is an example of taking him along with Chaos Knights. So there you have it.
Mm-hmm.
You can sub him in. But yeah, probably doing so with other Chaos factions that have not got a 9th edition codex, because the ones that have are just losing too much in the process and not gaining enough in return.
Okay. So it sounds more like I'm liking Belakor than the entire Chaos Demon Codex. But I would really like to make that guy work. I love the model. I love his rules. He just sounds amazing. Question is, can he make,
And he isn't.
one?
He's
Sorry?
an auto include for the faction, so I think that says a lot about him. And even in that, he allows you to take 2 completely different army builds.
True. Yeah. I mean, okay. It sounds good. I'll have a closer look at that. So yeah.
So actually, speaking of souping him in, Asarnil, would you ever consider taking Belakor along with Death Guard?
Usually, no, but we might have a little bit of a surprise for next tournament. That will be a pair tournament in Międzyrzecze. But I will say no more.
Come on, you cannot tease like that.
That doesn't count because you're still separate players.
No.
Okay.
There is a twist that we're planning to do, and it will include Belakor and Death Guard. So
Okay, I'll be waiting in anticipation to see the lists once they're out.
I think our list will win the most fun list there is in universe on this tournament.
Okay. God damn it! You've teased so much. Can't you just tell us?
No, you'll have to invite me again to talk about it.
Or we'll have to go to that tournament and see ourselves.
Exactly.
I'll read
Alright.
the list online.
Or not. Yeah, that's probably a little bit cheaper, and a bit, smaller on the effort side. Okay, guys. Last question on the demons army. Then, if I were to start collecting them, where do I start? What do I need? Is this army difficult to collect?
You need Belakor.
that we know already. Anything else?
Well, demons, I think historically were always an army that just uses lots and lots and lots of troops. So pretty much any of the troops choices you can work something with. Well, maybe not plague bearers, although I did see some Belakor lists using them. So that's a lot of models to put together and to paint. So I think that's enough for a start.
Troops. Okay. And you're sure that soul grinders don't work now?
They don't, but to not be so much of a dream killer.
Party pooper, yes.
Yeah, exactly. The tendency with the codices so far in 9th is that things that didn't work actually start being better. So maybe it is time to stock up on soul grinders. But if you do, I will not be returning your money if they're still crappy.
Yeah, so here's to hopes that they make that book work, or rework it, or release some new models for it. Hopefully everything that I just said. So yeah, I'll give it a think, because the army sounds promising. It sounds not. I mean, I thought it's very one-dimensional, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like there's more thinking to it. So it sounds like a promising army. Although you've made almost everything possible to discourage me from it. So it will be a tough pick. Right, guys.
You have some very weird ideas.
Yeah, like always.
And to be frank, the Belakor Army of Renown list is really cool in my opinion. I don't want you guys to think that I don't think it's good. I actually think that it's better than people think. And playing with Belakor and 3 units of Bloodletters, some Screamers, some Flamers, and a lot of small trash units, I think it's super fun and actually quite challenging to master. So if you like Belakor and demons in general, I think it's a great army to play.
Oh yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, come on. I used to play Khorne Demonkin at I think in 7th. So at least part of the demons was part of my army, and it was really enjoyable. Even though the army never performed amazingly, but it was just fun to have them and fun to field them. So yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm also considering maybe going back to it. Which reminds me, and I think it needs to be mentioned. Our competition, the competition that I mentioned throughout, I think, the last 5 episodes, is still going on. So if anyone hasn't submitted their army suggestion on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram yet, I strongly encourage you to do so. Just a very short reminder on the rules. Just go and post an army suggestion, which army I should pick. Coming back to the hobby after 1 year's hiatus. It doesn't have to be any of the ones that I indicated. It can be anything, really. Maybe an army that is easy for a person coming back to the hobby, or something like that. A straightforward army, or maybe a top army, but explain to me why in a comment. And by doing that, you automatically enter a raffle. And then I think it's the next episode, right, Joker, where we have
Yeah.
to pick a winner,
There's
right?
just one week left to enter the competition.
Yeah, so guys, we strongly encourage you to participate in that competition. I really tried hard to also let you know what the prize is. So we have a pro painted, beautiful, custom build chaplain model that works both as a Primaris and as a normal Marine. And you can field him in any Space Marine army, or you can put him on a shelf because he's just so freaking beautiful. So yeah, please enter the competition. It's as easy as subscribing to us and leaving a comment, and that chaplain might be yours. If you want to see how he or what he looks like, go to our Instagram or Facebook, and there are plenty of posts about him, so you cannot miss him. And with that, Asarnil and Joker, I think it's time to say goodbye. So it was a really interesting episode. It gave me a lot to think about before I make my final decision. Asarnil, you gave us amazing insight into Death Guard, and I thank you for that.
Welcome.
Joker, nice work. Trying to discourage me from the demon army. But Belakor is standing strong. Yeah, no, sorry, but Belakor is standing strong, and I'm still not 100% discouraged from it. So yeah, next week I will probably announce my final decision, and we will announce who wins the competition. So yeah, there's still 1 week to participate. Yeah, thank you guys, and until next time.
Right. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.